Hello everyone, welcome to Thyris Web Development Tips and Tutorials YouTube channel. I'm so happy to be here on the fifth webinar. Well, I don't know if I should really call it webinar now that it's YouTube live. You could call it live streaming. I would love to call it webinar itself. So today's topic is JavaScript, callbacks, promises, and async await. This is one of the most difficult topics that new people who are new to JavaScript find it very difficult. Even very recently, when I tweeted asking, what about JavaScript do you find hard, if any? And there were quite a few answers which pointed at this. That was quite expected, that callbacks are still fine. A lot of people understand that. But promises and async await is something that, still escapes the brains of many people. So today I will try to address why you find it difficult and maybe some ways or some tips or some ways you can overcome that. And I'll also do some live coding. This is probably my third live coding, so please be a little kind in case I go wrong somewhere. So I try to address all of this, and we will see some sort of a real use case today where we can use promises and async await. Okay, so firstly, the way this webinar goes is I will just constantly flow through for the next 20 to 25 minutes or even 30 minutes. So in case you have any questions during the webinar, you can interact on the live chat. If you liked some point, you can even say, great, I loved this. And at the end of it, I'll check for questions and I'll answer them at the end of the session. All right, so let's get started. I want to first address why this particular concept, why callbacks, promises, and async await are difficult. Generally, JavaScript is a language that people come to as from HTML and CSS, and then they come to JavaScript, generally without any previous programming knowledge. So first of all, JavaScript itself is a little overwhelming, because until now you were able to see what's happening, right? HTML and CSS were a little visual. You do something and you see that, oh yeah, this is how it appears. But how about JavaScript? The way you're introduced to it is starting with console log, alerts, and variables, types, and so many other things which you have no idea of how exactly is this gonna help me build a website. Where exactly am I going to use all these? That's one reason why many people find JavaScript itself hard. And when it comes to these topics, it's all easy flowing until you start with functions. Even loops are fine, if loop, for loop, all those is also still okay. But when you come to functions, suddenly you were going from line by line execution of the code, and now it breaks because from one line you just come to a function and execute it and go back and things like that. So if you don't have a good hold on functions, definitely promises and async await is like far away. So first thing you should make sure is you understand how functions work in JavaScript, because functions, you can pass them into other functions, you can assign them to variables, and so many such things, which gets a little confusing if you don't have a clear idea. So if you don't have a good foundation, so go back to functions and read all about it or watch tutorials and then come back to this is what I would suggest. But if you're comfortable, let's continue. So today I would like to show you some real way of doing it. So I just have created a folder where I've created a file, simple HTML file, nothing much. Let me just show you what it has. I don't have this, just a moment. Yeah, so right, so if you can see, all I have is this login form with a username, password, and a login button. Like you can see here, it's just a login with a form and with two inputs and a button, and a div, a placeholder for this response where you can say if this login is successful or not. Because today, if you try and log into any of the services online, you'll notice that if your username or password is incorrect, the whole page doesn't refresh, right? You will be able to see it right here saying that it's incorrect, your username or password is wrong. that's called Ajax. So that is something, or Ajax maybe, sorry if I didn't pronounce it right. So that is asynchronous. That is what happens. It's like something happens behind the scene, and it tells you right here without refreshing the page that it just gives you a response. So we have this response here for something like this, and it's just a simple style sheet, so nothing, it won't matter to us for this example, just for a visual appearance. So today what I'm going to do is an example that you should not use for production. You should not use it for anything apart from just learning. Please note that throughout the session. So a lot of things are not the way it is done in general convention. I just want to state this as a disclaimer before proceeding. So now what we're going to do is we will first see why we need asynchronous functions and why everything can't be synchronous. We will first type in a username, password, try to log in and see what happens, right? Now let's add some JavaScript here. First, let's take the form. So that's the first thing I need to change. So what we do is login form dot add event listener. So we are listening for the submit event. So once the submit event has happened, we get this e where we can say e dot prevent default. So what that does is it prevents the default action, which is actually taking you to a different page. Let's see if this works. So clicking on login now, nothing happens, which is the behavior that we are expecting, right? So let's continue now. And what we do is we will assign the username and password to username and password. So document dot get element by id again, username dot value, and let password equals document dot get element by id, password dot value. Right, so let's just console.log just to see it's appearing, so that we don't have any problems in the future. Okay, so something here and something here. Click on login. Yes, so we are able to see the username and password. Now we have them in these two variables. Now what we do is let's have a function that verifies login. So const verify login equals function that takes in username and password, and then it just returns, for now let's just say return login successful, just like that. And here we just say verify login, and console.log is what I'll do. Sorry for this. Yeah, console.log verify login. I pass in the username, password. So this is all basic stuff, but don't worry, we'll arrive at it. If you're watching this live stream, just have a little more patience. I'll get to the callbacks very soon. But in case you're starting from very basic, I want to make sure that you understand every single step of how it's going. So if you're not watching live, feel free to forward a little so that you're not getting bored. Now let's see how this works. Some password. It says login successful because it's calling this function. Now we actually want to check if username equals, let's say, ABC and password equals 123. Only then let the user login. So here login successful, else return login failed. Okay, so now the same thing, and it'll just say something, and if it obviously says login failed, but if we do ABC and 123, it says login successful. This is great, right? There's nothing wrong in it. Why not instead of console log, let's try and display that right here the way we generally see. So let's have another function for that. First we need to this in a variable. So const response div is document.getElementById, and response div is what it is, right? Yeah. And then we have another function which is show response, and maybe take two parameters, sorry, not here, equals function takes two parameters, which is like error and maybe some user data, and here it actually displays it in the response div. So response div dot inner HTML equals user data, but we need to check. So if not of error, then do this, else response div dot inner HTML equals error. Okay, yeah, that's great. Now we need to return the user data actually. And what we'll do is we'll have a user data equals, it's a new object, so and here let's say name is ABC and username is ABC, and then return user data, else return login failed. Let's actually see what happens, and not console.log, we can just do this and then say show response, and it takes in an error and user data, right? So yeah, let's say, I hope you're able to follow till now. And if okay, for now let's not do the error part, let's just take in one user data and whatever it is, let's just return the same thing. So here it's response, I just want to see that it comes here. Okay, so ABC 123, what it does, there's an error. Okay, so somewhere I'm still returning error, so sorry for this. Where is this? Show response, user data, where is the error? Please bear with me for one more minute, I'll figure this out. So we call the verify login with username and password, and we are trying to show the response here. Sorry, I'm so sorry about this. This is where the error is. For now, let me remove that whole part and try to do this. So if I just do 1 2 3, again response div is null, so I did something wrong. Oh, it's response and I gave response div. These mistakes are bound to happen, don't worry. So now if I do this, it's giving me some object. Great, that's what we want. It's returning the user data, and if I go wrong also, it says login failed, because we are returning login failed here. Great. So all this is perfectly fine if this particular function doesn't take much time. So till now it is still synchronous programming, because from here you're calling this function which just takes it's in the same thread, and then it gives you the output, and so you're able to display it. But this is not how it works, right? You'll have to actually check. You'll have to go server side and you'll have to actually check in the database if the login is really working, and that takes some time, which is why it's it doesn't happen line by line, and JavaScript does not handle this in the same way as many other programming languages do. So it's a single thread one. So when you do this, and in case this takes time, for now it's returning immediately. So let's mimic the server functionality. I mean, let's mimic that it actually takes some time to give the response timeout. I hope you've used this before. If you haven't, you will just see in a moment of what it does. So let me just add 1000 milliseconds, so that it's like it takes a minute. It takes a second to respond. So it's nothing, it's just the same the same code I have put inside set timeout. That means it responds within 1000 seconds. So nothing else has changed. But if you do this, and if I refresh, and if I enter 123, it says undefined user data yet. Alright, what happens is it runs this verify login, but it also runs this particular code because it doesn't know that this is going to take time. That's how JavaScript works. So this object, but then it's too late, right? It's already, you have already executed this piece. So what if we could actually tell JavaScript that after you execute, after you get some value out of this, only then call this function, right? The way to do that, or the first way to do that, is using callbacks. Now callbacks are not just used for asynchronous programming, they're used for synchronous as well. But like set timeout itself, this whole thing is a callback function, right? So after one whole second, execute this is what we are saying. And you can see callbacks in many other synchronous way also, right? So callbacks is not something new. Now the way to do that is, if along with username and password you could also take in another argument, which is actually a callback function. I wouldn't just call it callback so that it's quite confusing. I'll just say this is a callback function name. So we are telling that once you verify login, you call back this particular function. Simple, we are passing it. I'll show you how to pass that. And then once that's done, once you have some data, then call this callback function. So here I'm not going to say return user data. I'll just say error is login failed, and I'll keep it as it is. And then I'm just going to say call back this particular function with error and user data. I would say with null because we have the user data here, else call back with this error, and we don't have any user data here. And this is simple. So we are actually taking in username, password, and a callback function which is callback. So here all you need to do is remove this from here and put it here. So if you just say, once this is done, once you have some data, show response is the method that you need to call. Let's see if this actually works. So 1, 2, 3, login. Let's wait for a second, and something did not work. Okay, not a problem. I must have done something wrong, obviously. So, sorry. No, this is right. So callback function and show response is what I need to do with the user data. And so here again, sorry, I removed this, right? So it's not calling it right. Now here I'll say if not of error, that means if there's no error, then maybe user data dot name, display that, else responsive dot inner HTML equals error. Yeah, this should actually work, hopefully. Let's see. So now if I do this, yes, so user data dot name after a second, because this takes 1 second to execute. And if we have a wrong password, login, it says login failed. So we've perfectly done asynchronous programming using callbacks now. I hope this is clear you're able to actually see something happening. I wanted to show it visually of where it's applied, and you can also get this done. You don't need Node, you don't need anything to really understand callbacks. So if you're not watching live, if you're watching this, after some time, then please open your editor and browser and do the exact same thing of what I did. All right, that's when you'll actually understand of how to really do this. Otherwise you'll never gain confidence in using callback functions or the next steps that I'm going to show as well. But if you're watching this live right now, then watch it like a subscribe for my newsletter, something like that, and then name, email, something like that, and then check with this. So let me continue. Now that callbacks are understood, let's try to do the same thing using promises next. Okay, so I don't want to delete this anywhere, so what I'll do is I'll just copy this part, because this part is what will change. I will put it into something called callbacks. I can actually put this whole code in GitHub if you guys are interested, so please let me know in the live chat if you want this code to be available on GitHub. I haven't put it yet, and I'll create this file. I'll paste whatever I cut from there. So this is here, and we don't need this let response. Okay, verify login will do. So let me just see if this works again. 1 2 3 login, and we have ABC. So great. So let's do something like this: ABC logged in, wait, redirecting you or something like that, because that's what happens, right? Does this work? Okay, now this looks really neat. Now what we are going to do is replace this with a new JS file, promises.js. Let's create it, and I will first copy the entire thing and paste it here. Okay, so in promises it works a little different. It doesn't take in any callback function. Okay, so this is the same username, password, and it doesn't call back any function once it's done, but instead it returns something called a promise object immediately. So here it doesn't know that it's an asynchronous function. It just gets a promise, so it actually gets something immediately, or not after 1 second. I'll show you how that works. So for that you need to do return new promise with resolve and reject. You can actually call these anything else, but this is the convention, so let's go by that. And that's all it's going to do. It's going to return a new promise. What does that have? Let's copy this exact same thing within promise, and here it doesn't call back any function. Instead what it does is it resolves it. So that's the word you need to use with user data, else it rejects it with error. Simple, right? So we are immediately returning a promise object. So here again we don't have to call back anything. Instead, I don't know why this does it in new line. It's not formatting right for me. Sorry for this. So verify login username password. Here we don't call back, use any callback, but instead what we do is dot then, that is first verify login, and once you have some result, that is once this promise resolves, we don't know how long it takes, but we've received a promise saying that I will either resolve into something, some data, or I will reject, saying there is some error. So it's a promise that it will return something. So once verify login is done, and it will resolve to something where I have the user data, and then with this user data I can do whatever I want. So what I will do is I will call the show response, right, with the user data, error and user data. So null, error is nothing because I received the user data. But what if it did not resolve? How do you handle the error? What if it's actually rejecting it? Simple, you just have to add a catch here instead of then, or either after then. Catch error, and with this error I'm just gonna say show response error. That's it. So simple, right? Verify login, then do this if it resolved, do this if it rejects. Let's see if this works. I'm just hoping. So I do 1 2 3 login. Great. So it says ABC logged in, redirecting you just to make sure it's using promises.js. Yes, so it's using this very file. And if I enter a wrong password and I log in, it says login failed. Perfect. So we've implemented the exact same thing using promises. Now why did we do that, and why not just use callbacks? It seemed more simple, right? Why return new promise, and why all this? Why use then? Why use catch? Immediately when you see promises for the first time, like I did, I felt, why extra complication? Callbacks seem very much easier to understand. What is this whole promise? I will just stick to callbacks. I don't want to use something new like that, something that doesn't immediately make sense. But trust me, when you have a huge code and when you're going to do this, what happens is, with callbacks, let's say, okay, show response. Now this is very simple. You call one function and then you're just calling another function after that. It feels like this is simple. But what if after you verify login, you want to do something else with that data? Say something like get the, you're logged in with user. Now you want to know whether that person is admin or a normal user. So you check, you have another function here, and then you have another, within that you'll have another function, within that you'll have another function. So this is what keeps happening. Even if you have just 4 functions and you've gone wrong somewhere, it gets very difficult to debug, and it also gets very difficult to read and understand what is happening here. So callbacks make the maintainability quite difficult, and also debugging quite difficult, which is why I think ES6 introduced promises, which is easier to read, like verify login and then do this, and if you have something else then do this. You see, it's not going inside the function, so it's not like this, right? It's much easier to read. So it's like dot then and so on. If you don't even want to do this, there's something called promises.all. I will not be covering that in this session. So if you have 3 or 4 or more promises, you can do all of that in one single block without using so many thens also. So it makes maintainability much easier. But something even better got introduced on top of promises, which is async await. So let's see how to do the same thing that we did right now with async await. So I'll go back and change this to asyncawait.js. Let's create this file, and I will copy all of this here. Okay. Note that in async await, this doesn't change. It's actually going to return a promise itself. But what changes is the way you write this part. It's async await makes it look even more easier. It almost looks like synchronous programming, and you'll see how. So I'll just comment it out for now, just in case I need this for future verification. And so what we do is we need to have a function that is async. So we'll have to say async function login. Okay, and within this is where we execute this with an await. So await verify login, username, password. I don't do dot then dot catch, nothing. All I do is show response, and I guess that's it. Yeah, but what if this fails, right? Where is the catch block? So simple. All you need to do is use this within the try catch, which a lot of times we already do that, right? So it's much easier on the eyes. I mean, you already know this stuff. So or show response, and this is error. So many things might be wrong here. It might not be the conventional way of doing it, but this is only for understanding. I'm repeating. Please don't, point out that this is not how it's done. If you're experts, then great. Now I'm calling this function and this is async. So if you see, this looks like synchronous programming. This is what we tried doing this even before callbacks. Remember, we just did verify login and then we tried to show the response and we saw that it didn't work. So with async and await, with just these two keywords of async and await and within a try catch block, everything works just like it should. Let's see if it works first thing. So ABC 1 2 3, fingers crossed, and wow, wonderful. So it did, right? Let me try with the wrong password. Login failed. Perfect. So if you look at these three codes that we just wrote, you will be able to clearly see the difference of how it is. Maybe if you're not able to see it yet, the more you start using it, you will realize that async await is a lot better than promises, which is a lot better than callbacks. Now here's the tip. Right now, or whenever you complete watching this whole video, you have to practice this, because I myself I'll be very honest with you, I promise I practiced this whole thing at least 2 times before I was confident enough to code. That doesn't mean I wrote this code myself, yes, but you can Google up stuff. That is totally okay. In between, I Googled a lot of things. Many times I forgot the syntax of promise. Even now, if I had forgotten, I would have Googled right in front of you. Thankfully, I didn't forget because, maybe just today I looked it up. But you asked me to do this after 3 to 4 days, I might forget, because we're not going to use this every single day. At least I'm not a back-end JavaScript developer, so I rarely use these things. It's okay to forget the syntax, but what you should not forget is the whole concept. And how will that happen? If you practice it at least a couple of times with some different examples. I don't know, maybe you can think of some ways. You can use a to-do list. I know it's quite common, to-do list. People are bored of creating to-do lists, but you can do something like that and practice. Think of your own project, anything where you can. It involves a lot of things, involve asynchronous programming, right? So you can think of something like that and implement your own code just like I did. Very simple, just a simple form, and this is all it has, right? It just you try implementing using callbacks. Maybe you can add one more step, like I said, instead of show response, get the role of the user, either it's admin or something. So that way you will have another similar function, which is get role, and set timeout, give it 2 more seconds, add something like that. Experiment. It's okay, you'll go wrong. If you have any questions, if you have face some problems, you can even connect to me directly, or there are amazing JavaScript developers whom you can connect to directly, maybe on Twitter, and you can ask them this question. So my part is done. I would like to see if there are any questions right now. Let me see in the live chat, and right now there are no questions, so I guess it's easier to understand. But maybe a lot of you are not watching this live, so I would still encourage, you can ask me questions in the comments. I am quite active right now with the comments. I do respond. You can even send mail or connect to me directly on Twitter. So this is where you can get back to me, right? This was a very short session today, because I didn't want to overwhelm you. My initial plan was to include a lot of APIs and then even use fetch and include many other things, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. So I might do another sequel to this, where I use the Axion and fetch and many things. If you're interested, so do let me know. This is my website. You can see what else I do there, and I'm most active on Twitter, so please connect to me on Twitter at Shruti Valsa, or you can even connect to the official channel at Thyrus Official, and you're watching the YouTube channel right now, so please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't yet done that. If you've done that, great. Watch out for the next set of videos from me, and lots more to come. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. See you. Bye-bye. Let me end this, and wow, I'm not able to end this. Okay, bye all of you.